Krishna, Krishna. On the left, he aided Janavi Devi, and he brought the Radharani deity to the Krishna deity. So did you have the camera for the Sunday feast?
Yeah, I had it, but the voice recording was not good because of the projector was making constant fan noise. So I had the video recording though.
I'd like to see how they look. There's two verses with very short purports, and then I'll talk a little bit about Madhavendra Puri, and then a little bit about Srinivasa that I know. Two very, very important acharyas. Madhavendra Puri is the grandfather spiritual master of who? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the spiritual master of Ishwara Puri, and Ishwara Puri is the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. So today's text is 7, right?
Yes.
Right? So then I'll do the 7. Disappearance of Madhavendra Puri, disappearance of Srinivasacharya.
Appearance of Srinivasa.
No, disappearance. Both disappearance. And then there's another personality, I think his name is Parameshwara, and he's was an associate, all I know is he was an associate of Lord Nityananda. When Lord Nityananda left, he assisted Janavi Devi in her preaching, and at one point he had to carry Radharani across some area to get to the Krishna deity that she was worshipping, I believe at Radhakund. I think. Something like that. Okay. Did I say Om Namo Bhagavate yet? No. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the Supreme Human Being, Mother Saraswati, the Goddess Lord, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namani, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Kauravani Pachanine Devi Seshi Sunnivadi, Saskita Vesta. The deities are looking very beautiful in this white dresses too. Radharani looks like a bride. Yeah. So I'm going to read the Sanskrit for text 7, and then read it. You can chat along on this one. You have 7 up there. Okay. Etasmin me mano vidvan. Etasmin me mano vidvan. Kijjate jnana sankate Kijjate jnana sankate tan ma paranuda vibo na paramuda vibu kashmalam manasam mahat kamalam manasam mahat. Oh, I thought that was the Wow, you did it so good. That was amazing. I really thought it was a lot. That's good. Okay, we'll follow you. Go ahead. Etasmin me manos vidvan. Next. Vidyate jnana sankote. Tanna paranuda vibhu. Kasmalam manasam mahat. Anyone else? Itasman me mano vivan. Kidyate jnana gam sankate. Tanna pranuda vibhu. Kasmalam manasam mahat. Etasmin me mano vivan. Kidyate jnana sankate. Tanna pranuda Kashmaram manasam mahat. Okay, thank you very much for helping, Raghu. It was very good. So the word for word is etasmin. In this age. Me. My. Mana. Mind. Vidvan. O learned one. Vidyate is troubling. Agyana. Neshet. Sankate. In distress. Tat. Therefore. Not. Mind. Paranuda. Clear up. Vibhu. Vivo. O great one. Kasmalam. Delusion. Manasam. Related to the mind. Mahat. Great. So the translation is, O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. This is Vidura speaking to Maitreya. So you can repeat, O great and learned one. My mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. Do you know what the meaning of nescience is, Raghu? Ignorance. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Purport. Such mental bewilderment as represented here by Vidura takes place for some living entities, but not for everyone. For if everyone were bewildered, there would be no possibility of a solution by higher personalities. So then Sri Sukhuvacha, this is text 8, Sa itam kodita shatra tatva jigyasuna muni pratyaha bhagavat chitta smayan eva gata smaya. And the translation is, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, O king means Parikit Maharaj, O king, Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished, but then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God conscious. The purport, you can repeat. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, Maitreya. The O king refers to Parikit, and then Sukadeva is speaking about Maitreya. Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished, But then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God conscious. And there's a small purport here too. Since the great sage Maitreya was filled with God consciousness, he had no reason to be astonished at such contradictory questions by Vidura. Therefore, although as a devotee, he externally expressed surprise as if he did not know how to reply to those questions, he immediately became perfectly settled and properly replied to Vidura. Yasmin vigyate sarvam, evam vigyatam bhavati. Anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, and devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. Although a devotee may apparently express himself to be ignorant, he is full of knowledge in every intricate matter. So, I'll just speak a little bit about this here, and then I'll talk a little bit about Madhavendra Puri and a little something about Srinivas Acharya. So, this point where it says that Maitreya was seemed a little, according to Sukadev, he was a little agitated by the question, but then he just immediately responded to Vidura. And I can only assume, because probably I don't want to speculate, but I can only assume is that I don't think Maitreya has any doubt about who Vidura really is. Even if he doesn't know that he's Yamaraj, he definitely knows he's a very important and pious and learned member of the Pandavas. And he plays a very important role in counseling the 5 Pandava brothers. So he was sort of confused that he would be asking these questions, but I was thinking if, as his role, this is my own, for lack of a better word, speculation, philosophical speculation. Because he is Yamaraj, and he has to see people that are suffering as the results of their karmic activities, because they have become illusion, and by developing these false, misleading philosophies that, blaming God, if there is a God, why is he allowing me to suffer? I guess there isn't a God. I guess just can't count on him. I have to do what I have to do. And then, ultimately, at the time of death, they have to face Yamaraj. And then Yamaraj has to do his due diligence and award them the results of their activities, whether it's pious or impious. So, it seems as if Vidura is trying to make it clear about what is the actual position of the living entity and Supersoul. The fact is that if you think about it, Supersoul, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is in your heart all the time. How can there be anything inauspicious in your life at any moment? You're always associating with all auspiciousness. Krishna is all auspicious. Everything about him is auspicious. Even his punishment is auspicious. So, you would wonder, but then you could go even further to say, why is it that his devotees are put into so many difficulties? And that's basically what Vidura is saying. Why does he put his devotees in such great difficulty? Like in this particular case, the Pandavas. But that we know that this is all part of Krishna's Leela, and it's part of a way to show, it's preaching, it's a way to show us, the conditioned souls, those persons, we're not eternally liberated like the Pandavas, and we do go through reactions, obstacles created by our past activities. The Pandavas are going through obstacles because Krishna wants them to show us how to deal with adversity. But even then, even still, sometimes we may not actually necessarily, I can't really say this, but does everything that happens to me has to do with my past? Is it, if someone is unnecessarily creating some obstacle for me, maybe it's just that person at that moment being, impious. And still you have to tolerate. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no point to try to figure this out, where it all starts and where it all begins. Because the intricacies of impious activities, pious activities, and transcendental activities are so vast that it's best to just know what is karma, what is vikarma in pious activities, and what is niche karma or transcendental activities. Just know that and engage in that way. And even all we see, like today, I'll talk now about Madhavendra Puri. About Madhavendra Puri, is there any questions about what I just said? So, Madhavendra Puri was, he is the grandfather, spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. His disciple is Ishwara Puri, and Lord Chaitanya took initiation from Ishwara Puri. And we don't know a whole lot, according to Krishnadas Kaviraj, about Madhavendra Puri. At least Krishnadas Kaviraj hasn't put anything about his early life in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It may be in Vrindavan Das's Chaitanya Bhagavat, because he doesn't want to repeat something that's already been written or spoken by Vrindavan Das Thakur that would be offensive. And he's always very careful to point out that this pastime has been elaborately described by Vrindavan Das Thakur. And sometimes he refers to it as the Chaitanya Mangala, and then he refers to it as Chaitanya Bhagavat, because initially it was called Chaitanya Mangala, but then it was changed to Chaitanya Bhagavat. Someone else wrote a pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, so they called that one Chaitanya Mangala, and this was done by the higher authorities at the time. So, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we've all heard, I'm sure you've all heard this story, how Lord Chaitanya is traveling with with Nityananda and two other devotees. I don't think he gives the names. And so they go to the Gopinath temple in Ramuna. That's the Gopinath is the Shira Chora Gopinath, means the one who stole the Shira pot for Madhavendra Puri. So when they get there, Chaitanya, Nityananda and associates, Lord Chaitanya has kirtan and he goes into ecstasy, and then he says, let me tell you what I've heard from my guru, Ishwara Puri, about a pastime that transpired here with Madhavendra Puri and Gopinath. But first he backs up and explains that Madhavendra Puri was a very, very renounced individual, and he came upon Vrindavan. He's a follower of the Madhva line. That's what we're called the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. But it's because of Madhavendra Puri that he introduced the separation that Radharani feels and the gopis feel from Krishna. That was not there in this line until Madhavendra Puri introduced it, and Lord Chaitanya, really, had to, gave us the full picture of that whole mood of separation between the gopis and Krishna, and what kind of ecstasy the devotees were experiencing. And Lord Chaitanya's, one of his principal reasons for appearing is that he could experience that ecstasy that his devotees experience in separation from him. And that he goes off into these, like in the play the girls did the other day, and he thinks that the ocean is Jamuna, and he runs into it, and he goes unconscious, and his limbs become elongated, the joints separate, and he's floating. And eventually he comes around to consciousness. He was saved basically by a fisherman who's chanting Tava Kada Kamala Bhavena Kam Abhuta Shinam Dalita Hiranya Kasipu Danurena Kesavatita Narahadi Rupa Jajakadisha Hare. So, and it's interesting that he, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he doesn't sing Namaste Narsinghaya. And the past time that I read from Siddhanta's memories book, Nagapatni, a Prabhupada disciple, in 1970, she was 8 months pregnant. And she was living in Los Angeles Temple, and she was one of 8 devotees staying in Los Angeles, taking care of the deities and Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, all the devotees had gone up to San Francisco for the Rath Yatra, and Prabhupada was leaving the next morning. And that evening she went in to pay obeisances to the deities, and someone threw a cherry bomb, a very loud firecracker, into the temple. And Prabhupada, what is that? And Karanda searched it out, and he saw that Nagapatni was in the temple room, and she said it was just a cherry bomb. I'm kind of used to it. I have brothers; they were always doing things like this. So, but Prabhupada was very, 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 very upset, very concerned. She's a pregnant woman. These things could have caused some problem with her pregnancy, and he was very concerned how she was. So then he decided to teach the devotees the first part of that prayer. And I don't know how it works, whether, because Jayadev Goswami is the one who wrote the Das Avatars. So I don't know how it all fits together, but one is the first part, one is the second part. And we sing it, that the Tavakara is the second part. So Prabhupada then taught those devotees for protection. Prabhupada said this is for protection of the devotees, protection of the Guru, and protection of the movement. And he taught them Namaste Nanshingaya, Palada Ladalayandi, like that. So that's how that all came about. So Madhavendra Puri was in Govardhan, and he never asked anyone for food. He never begged for food. If it came, not of its own accord, he would receive it. And so he was sleeping under a tree. He had a number of rounds he was committed to, and he was chanting all day long. And after being there some time, he did see some young girls come by and get some water out of a reservoir of water there. And all of a sudden, one day, this very beautiful young boy came by, and he was just really attracted. He said, "It's very beautiful." And the boy says to him, "Why are you fasting in my village?" And he said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Well, these girls, I know everything that goes on in this village. And the ladies, the young women that came by, they noticed that you were not taking or asking for any prasada." And he said, "In my village, you can beg for food, or someone may give you food, and if you don't do either, then I will come and feed you. So, but these young girls, they asked me to deliver you milk. And so, here's this pot of milk. I'll be back for it later. And he says, oh, thank you so much. And he drinks the milk, but he just keeps thinking, who was that? And then he couldn't get his image out of his mind. And he kept waiting. He thought he was going to come back to get the pot, but he never returns. But then that night, while sleeping, that boy came back to him in a dream. And he said, I am Gopal, and I am the Lord of this village. And my deity I've been hidden by the pujari, who was afraid of the Muslims when they were coming to attack. And he hid me in a bush. And then in the dream, he shows him where the deity is in the bushes. You should go tomorrow and get all the men and get me out of these bushes. Put me on top of Govardhan Hill and worship me up there. Make a temple for me and offer a big feast. Bathe me in cold water, and I will be restored to my original position. So he gets up and starts telling everybody, I had a dream, and Gopal, Krishna, came to me, and he says his deity's over there in the bush. Nobody doubts him. Can you imagine if one of us started going around, I saw a dream and Krishna's over here, and we got to go dig him up, But everyone understands, and they're in Vrindavan, so they all, they work very, very hard, get Gopal out of the bushes, and grass has grown up all around him, and he's really entangled in there. They bring him up to Gopal, they get a big stone and make it the platform from the stand, and then they put like a throne, and then they put another big stone behind him as a throne, and then they start offering very luxurious prasad and water and bathing him in cold water. And then they had a big Anakuta celebration like what Krishna had arranged with Nanda Maharaj and the coward men when he told them not to worship Indra. And this went on for many, many days. And people started coming every day from other towns, other villages, from all around, from very far away, coming to offer their foodstuffs and other materials to worship Gopal. And then eventually they built a temple there. And so then things were going on nicely for some time. And then he has another dream. Gopal comes to him in the dream and says, I'm really, really hot. I'm still not, I need you to go to Jagannath Puri and get sandalwood pulp and camphor. Now this was this is back in, this is before Lord Chaitanya. So that would be the late 1400s, early 1500s, something like that. So it doesn't give the dates, as far as I know. Anyway, and he has to go by foot. He has no money. And he has to go through Muslim states. It's very dangerous. It's not an easy thing to do. He has no fear of it. He just does it. And he walks all the way across, but he stops in Ramuna. That's where Gopinath is. So he stays at the temple there one night, and he's looking at the Gopinath deity. He has an ecstatic kirtan there. He immediately goes into experiencing ecstatic symptoms in front of Gopinath. And then they're about to make an offering to Gopinath. And he had been asking the head pujari, what do you feed your deity? Because maybe I can get some ideas of what kind of other preparations we can offer our Gopal. And so they're making an offering, and he told them that they have this nectar, shira chora, shira, like a sweet rice. And I forget what they called it, Amrita something. And he says this is what this temple is known for. And he said, oh, I would love to find out how to prepare that. And if only I could taste it. And then so then they're making the offering, and he is thinking in his mind, as they're making the offering, I wonder what it tastes like. And then he realizes, he stops himself, how can I think like this? It hasn't even been offered, it's being offered to Krishna, to Gopinath, and I'm thinking about how it tastes. I'm thinking about my own tongue. But actually he was thinking about for service for Gopal. So as soon as the offering was over, he ran out because he felt that he had committed a great offense, that he was lusting over the offering before it had been offered. And then apparently then later that night, the deity Gopinath comes to the priest in a dream and tells him that sannyasi, he's very dear to me, and I've hidden one of the pots of the Shira, and I want you to go and get it. It's behind the curtain on the altar, and go find him in the village. He's sleeping in the village, and he's calling out, Madhavendra Puri. He's sleeping, no one's around. And he gets to him, and he offers, he says, Gopinath told me to bring you this. He wants you to taste it. And so he immediately starts drinking it, and it's like, couldn't believe it. Wow, how it was like nectar. And then he takes the pot and breaks it, and takes all the pieces of the pot and puts it in his pockets, so that while he's traveling, he can eat one a day, one piece of the pot. And he immediately realizes that now everyone's going to want to come, and because they're going to find out that the Gopinath deities ordered the pujari to bring me a pot of Shira. So everyone's going to think I'm very advanced, and I'm not, and I want to get out of here right away. I don't want all this adulation. So he leaves, gets to Jagannath Puri. They give him something equivalent to 50 pounds, I think, or something like that, of sandalwood, and about 8 ounces of camphor. And then he starts on his journey. And then Gopal comes to him in a dream and says, because it's going to be dangerous, it's very difficult. Yeah, the Muslims, it's a very valuable item, and the Muslims will make him pay heavy taxes. He has no money. How he's going to get it all the way back to Vrindavan? So Gopal says to him in the dream, I have already received the sandalwood and the camphor. Now you give this to Gopinath and offer it to him for the Brahmins there to make the sandalwood paste and camphor and cool his body. And he does this. And after Lord Chaitanya finishes telling the story, they all go into ecstasy. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they have a kirtan that lasts late into the night. They fall asleep in the temple, they get up for artik and leave. So that is a brief story about Madhavendra Puri. Srinivas, I'll tell you very quickly.
Have you been there?
Huh?
Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
I've been there once. So the offering, the pot is like this big.
Yeah,
Very nice.
like a clay pot, like that, yeah. And I think they offer like 12 pots. That's what he was saying in Krishna's Bhagavatas. I'm sure it's one of the places that Jayapataka took his disciples around on Parikramas, you know.
Yeah.
So, I just want to mention Srinivas briefly. And this is a story where how frustrating, because he apparently, according to all the authorities, he is the personification of Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy. And Lord Chaitanya was very interested in this young boy, and he left the planet while Srinivas was very young. His father was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, and he finally decided to go and see Lord Chaitanya, and then he was told he was in Jagannath Puri, but actually he was in this other village. I forget the name of it. And they said that Keshava Bharati is going to initiate him as a sannyas, and he's going to cut off his hair. And this makes Srinivas's father, I think his name is Ganga something, he said, what? They're going to cut off his beautiful black hair? Everyone is so upset. They're going to cut off Chaitanya's black hair? And, but anyway, the Krishna Das, they do it. They cuts off the hair in front of everyone. Everyone is crying and yelling, no, no. And then he gives him the name, Kesava Bharat gives him the name, the sannyas name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And so Srinivasa's father could not, even though he was angry that he became sannyas, could not stop chanting, Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya. He was totally absorbed. And he did get an audience with Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya told him and his wife to go and see Jagannath. While they were there, Lord Chaitanya said that he actually, when they came back, he said, and Jagannath and I are one and different, but I know what you were praying. I know that you were praying for a child. And I'm going to provide you with you will get a child very shortly, and he will be the personal personification of my ecstasy. He'll be a Gora Shakti. And he'll do very good service in distributing this Sankirtan movement. So all this transpires, and Srinivas keeps thinking that he's going to meet Lord Chaitanya. When he gets there to Jagannath Puri, he had just left. But he meets Gadadhar Pandit, and Gadadhar Pandit is expert. He knows the entire Srimad Bhagavatam and sings it in various melodies, very beautifully. And for a while, he did sing him the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he said, but I cannot do this anymore. Lord Chaitanya is gone. I cannot sing the Srimad Bhagavatam anymore. But what I will do is give you my copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The only problem is that because he would go into ecstasy so often, the tears would fall onto the writing, and it would wash away some of the verses. So he didn't have the complete Srimad Bhagavatam. But Gadadhar Pandit said, don't worry, you go to Vrindavan and take shelter of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. And he's thinking that's going to happen, but when he gets there, they've already left. He's always just missing them. But who is there is Jiva Goswami and Gopal Bhatta. And so they take care of him and they train him up. And then Jiva Goswami organized the first traveling Sankirtan party of book distribution. It was Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasacharya, and Shamananda. And they had a cart with all these books, and they had to go through jungles, through Muslim countries, very dangerous. They finally got to Bengal, and there's this one king, I don't remember his name right now, and he actually was a Vaishnava, but he made a living he had an astrologer that could tell him which travelers on the road have a lot of wealth. And then his men would go out and steal the wealth, and that was the way he collected taxes from travelers. So this astrologer told them that there's a caravan coming, and they have some men protecting this cart, and it has a great treasure. It's worth a fortune. So they go ahead, they steal the cart. I mean, these are the only books of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. These are the only books of Jiva Goswami. This is it. And they've been stolen in the middle of the night. You can imagine how they felt, all three of them. So when the cart is brought back, the booty is brought back to the king, he opens it up very carefully, and it's manuscripts, it's books. But then he sees the signature of Rupa Goswami, and he knows who Rupa Goswami is. So he knows this is now I've committed the greatest sin of my life. I have so much. This is the writings of the Goswamis. I must rectify this mistake. So he had a class every day in his at his palace by someone claiming to be knowledgeable of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And his knowledge was incomplete. And Srinivas happens to come and listens. He never questions about, have you seen the books? Because our books have been stolen. And he goes day in and day out, and the king is attending this class. Everyone attends this Bhagavatam class. They're all Vaishnavas, but they make their money by, they're like, Robin Hoods. They go out. Some of our Sankirtan parties were kind of like that, but not exactly. But so no, they weren't anything like that. But they did some pretty intense things in order to distribute Prabhupada's books. And so, that was the difference they were giving. They were giving something much more valuable. So, Srinivas just can't take it. He's listening to it for weeks, hours and hours, and it's just awful. And he's heard from Jiva Goswami, he's heard from Gadadhar Pandit. He is an expert in all the proper melodies of the Bhagavatam. And he says, so I've sat here and listened for days and days, and I'm sorry, you don't understand the Bhagavatam. That is not the correct meaning of this verse. And he's really, who are you? And he's very insulted. But then the king steps in and says, no, let's hear. You speak on the Bhagavatam. Because he was watching this person, Srinivas, and he was wondering who he was. And then when he began to speak, everyone was spellbound. And he was chanting the Srimad Bhagavatam. And they were all just crying. Even the person who was giving the class that he said was not qualified to chant, he realized, I'm not. You have shown me that you know the Bhagavatam. And the king then completely surrenders. He actually becomes his disciple, and then he reveals to him that he has the books of Rupa and Sanatan and Jiva Goswami. So you can imagine Srinivas's elation and ecstasy. So this is, on this day, I guess we should have sang Yayani No, that song. But on this day, both Madhavendra Puri and Srinivas left this mortal terrestrial plane. And even they had obstacles and difficulties. So when Vidura is asking Maitreya, how is it that if Krishna is in your heart, that he's all auspicious, why are we experiencing suffering? Even because this is a place of suffering. This world is a place of suffering. And this is the message. Don't try to make a permanent plan, a permanent arrangement here, because you will be frustrated. It will be you work very hard to build something, and to have children and so on, and then it's all in the blink of an eye. It's gone or you're gone. This is not a nice place. There's even whatever we do, then there's always, like the crickets in the forest of material enjoyment in the 5th canto. There's always crickets. The crickets are the criticizing all the time. Crickets. No matter what you do, oh, but he didn't do that. Oh, but yes, but not. He forgot this, or he didn't say that correctly. You have to learn to be tolerant. So, anyway, it was a really auspicious day, and we should meditate on the pastimes of Madhavendra Puri and Srinivasacharya, and see if you can find out more about Parameshwara. And then tomorrow we'll have the rest of the Bhagavatam class. Anyone have any questions or comments? Yes.
So you were talking about Srinivas's father.
Yeah.
What was his name? They call him Chaitanya, I think.
No.
He's
No.
always chanting Shri Krishna.
Oh yeah, no, I think they did. They started to call. Yeah, I think they did.
He wasn't the same person as the barber.
Oh, I forgot. No, that's
Oh,
no.
The barber was totally different.
No.
Because I heard something happened to the barber too. He was really affected by the whole.
Everybody was. The whole village. And I saw some Radhanath disciples doing a play at New Panahati probably about 10, 12 years ago, that live in Atlanta. And they knew who I was, and they knew that I had done a play for Prabhupada. And so they asked me to sit and watch the rehearsals. And it was the pace. You know, in India, like you watch Indian movies, the pacing is very long. It's not like in America, things are like quick, fast. You know, they may, you know, they'll do a shot on the person's face from different angles. You know, but this play was so devotional, and they did it in a very even, slow pace, really meditating on every phase of it. And the whole story was about the pain that the residents of that area felt. Because Lord Chaitanya he was Nimai Pandit, and he had beautiful black hair, and he was a beautiful, tall, man, and everyone was attracted to him. And to cut off his hair, and here's the other thing, is that in these verses I was reading, you know, in our movement, when Prabhupada left the planet, there was 2 of the 11 original zonal acharyas. 2 of them were grahastas, Jayatirtha and Bhagavan. The others were all sannyasis. And they immediately started to say, no. Grahasta can't be guru, no. You have to be sannyas. And they immediately put pressure on Bhagavan to change ashram. Jayatirtha, he held fast, but then he had some difficulty. So their solution is, take sannyas. But actually it says that it's better for someone who's a guru to be a grahasta, because you have to perform so many different yagyas and sacrifices, and the sannyasis have nothing. They have nothing. So I found it very interesting that we had it backwards. We thought, I guess he could be. No, in Lord Chaitanya's time, I guess a sannyasi could be a guru. Yeah, I guess that would be all right.
Growing pains.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I was really interested in the Srinivasa's family. I heard this one last night. It was so long ago I might not have it correct.
He also had 2 wives.
There was his father